Okay, welcome to another episode of Seeds of Music. I'm your host, Kyle Williams, and this is the #1 web show where aspiring independent artists, musicians, and producers can learn right now how to gain wider exposure, grow a strong base of raving fans, and make a living doing what they love. Now, today's episode is a little bit more unique because for the first time we have someone on the show with us as a guest who is also a listener who signed up for the email newsletter and got in contact with me, and we got him set up for an interview on the show. George Hendrickson performed with a band called The Works in the years 1994 and 1995, got signed under Neat Records with their title track Extraordinary Dream, and then after that it was a wild ride for him where they eventually landed, among other things, on Billboard magazine. And what we're going to talk about in this episode is how George handled his dealings with other individuals in the label, how he approached them, how he chose to speak with them, what were his social tactics behind those dealings, and the pitfalls of multitasking if you are the artist, writer, manager, lawyer, all rolled up into one, and how to deal with that. So stay tuned and let's jump right in. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Seeds of Music. We have on the show today George Hendrickson. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
And so let's just jump right into the questions. I usually start babbling a little bit in previous interviews, but I just want to jump right into this concept of your personal experience with multitasking different aspects of your career, because I know when we were talking through email, that was one of the things you mentioned, is that you don't recommend multitasking a lot of these different aspects. Can you tell me why?
Well, myself personally, it depends upon, I think, the artist. If you're really focused on your craft a lot of the time, and it takes up a lot of your emotional energy, your physical energy, and just your focus in towards getting things done in a very prompt way and very accurately. I mean, if you're the kind of artist that really gets immersed in what they're doing and they can't be bothered by X, Y, or Z, then it's better to hand off some of that. What we had done initially, the writing came from myself primarily, and my brother to a little bit lesser extent, but he was there as well. And so when the songs came out, a lot of my energy went right from writing songs to all of a sudden receiving phone calls from a multitude of people. This went from attorneys to record labels over in England and in the States as well. We did not have a manager at that point, and so it was thought, well, just take the calls and see what they want. But it took away from my craft as well. I couldn't really immerse myself in the music as much as I wanted to at times, and I really look up to the people who can do it. Who can step away from songs that they've written or they're in the middle of doing, and how much emotional energy it takes out of them to do it. If it doesn't take that much, then they can draw the line and still get time management done in that way. If I to do it again anytime soon, it would definitely be done with somebody who has the time to focus on that and leave me to writing the music and just doing what I do solely. Because I took, I went from literally writing songs to taking phone calls from anybody I could think of at all hours of the day and night. And so it took away from the craft, and the focus and the information to the band members was often circumvented. It wasn't one focused person saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. So it became kind of jarbled, and it wasn't as effective as it could have been, I think.
And so it just seems that that's just kind of the reality. There is a give and take. Like you could, record and write and not deal with having a career out of it by going through the mechanisms and a capitalistic society to market and sell that music.
It's very, and when you find, if you write a piece of music or you do something like that and you put it out there, all of a sudden you're getting calls. Mm-hmm. It's instinctive to take that call and start responding to all these people. Yeah. You can respond to an extent, but when it comes to legalese or things that they really want to do and to become problematic, that could present an issue if you're not that kind of person that can defocus on one and focus on the other. The kind of people I admire who can do that, it's a great thing. But I would recommend it if you're the kind of artist that you're the kind of artist that has to focus on what they're doing. Mm-hmm. to leave that to somebody who has a track record. Finding out about that track record is a task as well.
So
because you never know who you're.
Yeah, it just seems like when you're looking for someone to fill in that gap, to increase like the chances of you being able to have a successful career by doing stuff that you're not as willing or you feel you're not as capable. It seems like that's got to be a process, finding those people. And I know that you've hired a lawyer when you were with your band The Works from 1994 to 95. Can you just give us some tips on how do you like screen the lawyers and how you contacted and then how you approached them?
Actually, he was one of the first ones that we actually contacted. We took it from a band mode right into, okay, we really want to, our goal is to get signed, and do we think we have the content enough that it's good enough to get signed? So we put in the work in the studio on a 4-song EP, and we really tailored it. We tailored the craft very, very carefully in a great studio, and came out of it a couple of months later, and we said, okay, what's our best bet? And we met up with a lawyer in New York, a very flamboyant character who he heard the music at first strike, and he said, "Oh, 6 months, and we'll have you signed up with somebody." And we were like, well, God, why did we look anywhere else? So it seemed like a very, okay, come on, this is a big business out there, and not that many people really make money at it. So we put the music forward, and there was a monthly fee, which we kind of went with, and within a very short time frame after that, and we don't know precisely as to whether or not it was his mechanism that had caused the UK to call us and to sign with the label over there, because he was putting out, putting out information over there, and primarily in the States is what we were interested in. Then we got the call from the UK. Simultaneous to all this, we were playing out as a band, and we had met a lot of people in the music business. We're handing out tapes and this kind of thing. So we don't know exactly.
Doing the ground hustle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we don't know if the lawyer, when he contacted me, he didn't know if the information had come from him either. He was kind of surprised that the UK was calling us. And so he said, we got the guy from the UK that wants to get in contact with you. So he was kind of surprised as well. So we didn't know what mechanism actually affected it at that point. So we took down the information. He screened the offer, and it seemed to be a good offer. And we signed on to a deal with Neat Records out of Sutton, Surrey in England for the course of, the 4-song EP, Wales, England, Ireland, and so on. And that's where a lot of things started to speed up very quickly. Mm-hmm. We were also picked up in Billboard magazine for a Critic's Choice on a number of occasions. And when the billboards came out, the flood of phone calls came as well. And I was taking a lot of the phone calls. So this, sometimes ego, well, I want to take this call and all that kind of stuff. But if it'll take away from your craft, then maybe not such a good thing. Because these people are calling you about your music kind of stuff. And so I did as much of it as I possibly could at that point. And towards the end, it became too much to handle. Too many things happening in the States, not simultaneous to the UK. The UK was finding out that we were becoming big in the States via Billboard and via radio.
So the traditional outlets,
Yeah, so they were hustling over there like they were suddenly out of the water. It was a relatively small label in England. And so they were scurrying to get me CDs over here as fast as they possibly could, to put in, where was it, Boston College Radio. We went #1 for a couple of weeks. And, they were calling for, a couple of thousand copies. And, they weren't coming from England in any hurry because these guys are caught off guard. So the whole thing was happening in a quick avalanche.
Yeah.
And simultaneous to all this as well, like I said, we were meeting all these people, and it was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure at that point.
So in this whole experience that you've had, I mean, working with this lawyer, I mean, he was helping you obviously with aspects that, like, it was overload, so you needed someone to help you. What was, like, looking back, can you distill the single most important quality that people should look for when they're going to hire a lawyer or someone to handle the legal aspects?
Yeah, I think what I had written to you in the email, with honesty and their intention, like, we knew that the attorney was going to go about it in a certain fashion. He knew us to an extent. We know ourselves as people and how we conduct ourselves with other people. And so we don't know, like I said, the mechanism that actually got us onto the UK label. It may have been through associations of our own that we had that happen. But yeah, the single most point that we looked for. Well, a man named David Wood in the UK he owned the label in England, and he was very, very human with us. The lawyer had his job to do, and he was doing it. He wasn't such a human contact, and the label was very human with us. So as long as we were honest and upfront and forward with them, we got it in return from them as well. So these kind of people we gravitated towards. And, because it was a simple, well, we like the stuff and you like the stuff, let's do it. It wasn't a bottom line money thing necessarily. But we were both looking at the end result, of course.
Okay. So it's kind of looking for more of a human element in your dealings. I like that idea. I like that idea. And it seems like maybe that's more possible with smaller labels. Maybe artists now could seek out, literally the smaller labels to help them jumpstart. Because if you're in the beginning and you're small, I kind of feel like going for big labels, which I'm not a fan of, and that's not really what Seeds of Music is about. But bootstrapping, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps from very little and going for small labels who are still very artist centric, craft centric, music centric, and the small business mentality plus also has this element of willing to take risks and put themselves out there. So it seems like maybe that was the X factor for you. Even in the 90s where you had all these traditional media outlets to go through, it's still about human connections. And so you had the small label that was willing to work with you on a very human level, and and you got hooked up with the lawyer who was ready to do his job, but you still had that core group of people who were understood you and you understood them. And that was kind of your springboard. At least that's my I'm listening intently and I'm trying to distill this into,
Oh yeah, I mean, we went through the normal course initially of thinking, okay, let's see about, these bigger labels. Let's see what we can do with some demo tapes. And of course that was met with, you're up against a huge wall and you're up against talking with many people and hoping you get return phone calls and all these other things. And if they don't know you, it takes your, how you come off on people is a big thing. Yeah. That's what I was mentioning is I try to keep myself as humble as I possibly could while doing these things, because there's a lot of artists out there that are all going for the same thing. And they know that. Yeah. They know that when you arrive. Yeah. So how you go about it is very important. So we tactfully laid the music down and said, when you get a chance on this kind of thing. And we would sometimes get a response, sometimes not. And it was only after we were, in Billboard, and that was through an association, through a guy I knew who was an editor. He listened to the music and he picked up on it right away, and he said, let's put you in here. Then the label started to call us. So then the tables got turned on that. And at that point we were signed in the UK. So it became this mountain very, very quickly, very fast. Over the course of 6 months, I would say, it was taking off. So
it's got that reminds me of a book I just finished reading, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Anyone listening to this, you should check out that book. It's basically about the concept that you can experience exponential change from very, very, very small things, very, 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 very little, tiny tweaks. And it's just hard for us as humans to understand that, because we think, okay, you work twice as hard, you get twice the results, when you could really just tweak 5% of what you're doing, and then there's just this huge explosion.
And then it comes at you sideways, and you're like, I didn't expect it to come from here, but hey, this is huge. So let's just go with this, and that's what we did, And the excitement factor is there as well, because you work at it for so long, and anybody in the music business knows that to get your stuff heard and to get it out there with people like you is fantastic. I mean, what you're doing, I think, is really great, and a lot of people are gonna, you learn from it, and you listen, you think, well, maybe I can go about it X, Y, Z. It's a great thing to do. Had we had the internet and this kind of thing back in the 90s, it would have been a different game maybe. But I can tell you, it can happen exponentially and pretty quickly. And then egos, you have to watch that part of the boat, because if you're dealing with a band per se, and then all of a sudden you're presented with a contract. The contract was written into a writer share versus performer shares. And so I was the primary writer. So I think it was up to I would get a certain percentage more than the other members of the band. And we had been together for a number of years. And it was kind of a question mark to me as well. I didn't want to take that much credit for, when it came down to the bottom dollar, it was really tough. And you had to sit there across from each other and say, okay, well, I'm going to take the 35%. You guys just take, and it was, it was a tightrope. And you have families involved as well. Families.
So some of the band members had kids.
Oh, sure. Okay. And we all worked for a living, so it was all looking at us like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to sign with, and well, they're going to get angry with you doing, this kind of thing. And so
that's kind of inspiring though, because that you guys did this while having a family and you said working at the same time.
Yeah. So the families, everybody pretty much froze in their tracks when things really started to take off. It was getting on the radio all over the place, and then Boston College Radio, it went #1, as I had said, and we were called to go up to Boston and play, and the UK was hustling as fast as they could to catch up with this tidal wave. And the families were all like, okay, they didn't know how to react. I mean, a lot of people, when you're presented with the actual concept of, okay, you can do this now, how are the people around you going to react as well? So that's a real pivotal factor. If you're a solo artist, I can see, okay, find someone you can really trust and go with that. But if you're dealing with a band, it's a whole different ball of wax, that one. Yep.
You have like however many relationships between one band member to another, to that, to another, to that, to another.
And the wives and husbands of, and they would say, okay, so, are you guys going to do this 2-week stint in Boston, and who's going to do it? It becomes a whole, cavalcade of things going on quickly, so.
So during that period, this was happening in the mid-90s. What was the single biggest change that you've seen in the industry since then? And how do you think if you would have went through that now with internet technology? I mean, what would be?
Oh gosh, I would have. It feels like the human factor, as I had said, has been taken away to an extent. We were shopping with cassette tapes initially.
Yeah.
We would go down to literally New York City and try to meet people and hand off tapes and this kind of thing. It's been done, many, many years. And in doing that, we met face-to-face with people, which was a really pivotal thing in the elevator with Hall & Oates. It was one of my first introductions to big people. And just going up to this 21 Records, and it was actually the guy from the band, and I thought, oh, God, this is embarrassing. Here I am with my cassette tape. What am I going to say to this guy? I have no idea. He owned the label at that point, and so I didn't press him for any information besides hello, and just talked to his secretary and literally handed the tape off. And but these days now you can send your MP3s anywhere, which is good and bad, right? Because that way you wouldn't actually have to get out there and hit the street and literally bump into these people.
Yeah.
We met many more people along the way. I'll mention them in time. If you press me, because it was pretty amazing. So that factor is taken away somewhat.
Yeah, MP3s, digital distribution, being able to fling them out and about any which way on the internet. I mean, there's a lot of them, and so I'd say it's noise. I mean, the biggest challenge you run into is that noise. But from what I'm thinking would be like a great strategy for artists now is to combine the both, to get on the ground. Building your network, spreading your music. I mean, you might have like a demo tape, won't be on a cassette, it'll be on a CD or I don't know, on a thumb drive.
Right.
But do it in a non-douchey way. Obviously you can't be. Biggest piece of. I'm sure this. I don't know if this ever works for anyone, but going to a 7-Eleven parking lot or a grocery parking lot and asking people to buy your CDs out front. If you're doing that right now, please stop. This is just a side note, because it's like you don't want to do that kind of groundwork, because most often not no one's going to buy your CD just off the bat, especially nowadays when they don't know you and haven't heard your music. But definitely, that's an oblique kind of move to make. I've seen people doing that as well, just literally out there hitting it in the subways in New York, handing out their CDs everywhere. And so you're thinking, well, maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, who really knows? But people to pay for the CD.
Oh, that's an ouch.
Yeah, that. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to you out there hustling your CD and giving it away for free. Not exactly sure if that would work if you're just doing it en masse to anyone who walks by, because you have no clue. That's not targeted. You have no clue if those people
Right.
like are even into what your style of music, or if they're even the type of person who regularly
Yeah.
purchases music or goes to shows. So, on and on and
Pretty,
on.
yeah. It's not a terribly focused way of doing things right now. I mean, presenting music in a format, at at a venue that you're going to be wanted there a lot, and
Yeah.
people are going to see you is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
We never did the streets like that. No, never did. So.
Yeah. But, can you tell us a little bit about your band, The Works?
Yeah.
So know a little bit more about it. Like, what was it? What was it like working with a band in the 90s? And do you think it would change working with a band nowadays, just with the way recording technology is different? Which you're
Well, fundamentally, I don't think it would change it fundamentally, because you have the 4 or 3 people or 2 people, whatever you're down to in a band, and literally the work part of it, was going into the studio after the song was formatted with your band members, and literally sometimes sweating it out, putting in a lot of work and a lot of hours, and having to be very, very patient, to get your correct sound, to make sure things are very, well kept and well done. And we spent many hours, in the studio just retaking vocals or doing guitar parts over and over. And a lot of it was a lot of fun, but a lot of it was also, all right, this doesn't, it's not going to sound good, period. So let's just, off the table. A lot of stress, in and out, that kind of things. And it was a real relationship. That was a great relationship. It was fantastic. And you were in and out of others' lives. And but when it came down, I don't think it would fundamentally change, no.
okay.
Because you're working with a group of people and they all have their input. And you're working, all towards one steady goal, I don't think that would change.
And dealing with not band members in the small label, I mean, that's got to be tricky sometimes. Like what's been what was your strategy for making dealings with others go smoothly?
Dealings with it insofar as labels or band members, you meant, or?
Well, let's say for instance the label then, not necessarily band members, just because we seem to have been focusing on in that direction. But yeah, dealings with this small label that you were working with initially, and the lawyer. Basically, no one who creates music, none of the band.
Right.
Yeah.
So you meant how was my dealings with them?
What's been your strategy for effectively making your dealings with them go smoothly? How do you approach people?
Yeah, that's it depends upon the kind of person you literally are. I mean, if you're out to really, give yourself to the music and be honest about it from the outset, and not that it's not a dishonesty, but it's more
how about
a sincerity in what
you
you're doing.
Trust at first because you don't know them.
Yeah, precisely, and they're going to sense. I think that when you present them, something that you really crafted and you've done well, and you don't want to be there to affront them or to press them too much, because they probably have their own gig as well and they're doing their own things. So you just present them in a fashion that would leave them options as well. And we never pressed people. We never really did that because it never really got us anywhere. So it wasn't very effective. So trust was a big one. Yeah, and the human factor. We would talk with the guy from the label, and he ran the label. So it was like, David, how you doing this, and how'd your day go, and all this kind of stuff. Okay. So it was a very human thing. Whereas the lawyer was a whole different, that was he was that kind of thing. So.
Oh yeah, in and out, and then.
Oh yeah. He was a great guy, though.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, but he did get a lot of information flying our way. I must say, he really did. What he stated was within a 6-month period, right off the bat, and we thought, well, we must be the greatest band ever made, or he's just trying to, blow it up our butts, but, whatever.
Yeah.
In any event, it did happen shortly thereafter. Who's to say, as I mentioned, we had met many people along the way who all influenced, and we'd given tapes out here and there to some good people. So
who's some of the more exciting people that you've met? Not them being exciting people, but exciting for you.
Oh God,
that's some examples.
Examples. Well, Sir Paul McCartney was one. That was one of the biggest, and his wife Linda, and the band as well. They were in New York at Saturday Night Live, and we had the opportunity to be down there as well with them in the green room, and to actually meet them and talk to them. It was a very privileged position we were put in that night. And they actually came over and talked with us, and Linda was so sweet. She was from upstate New York, and we hadn't all realized. And so she talked with us at length about where we were from and this and that. And that was and Paul, of course, it was like, what do you say to the guy? What do you say to this guy? I think my brother had mentioned.
Hello.
Yeah, my brother had said, so are you playing like just big venues up here? An obvious question. He's like, yeah, pretty much. So it was scattered questions. You didn't really know quite how to react to the guy. Oh, he was fantastic, though. He was so a mellow guy. Linda was really, really nice, though. She was a great person. As well, after that, then it just came boom, boom, boom.
Have you heard Paul McCartney's new song, just on a side note?
Yes, I did. Very, very good.
Okay.
Very good. Very upbeat as well. So I liked it right off the bat. Normally I do with Paul. Some of his stuff, not to... when it slowed down somewhat, but this is the pretty upbeat stuff he's coming out with right now. At this stage of his career, it's fantastic to hear. Elton John's coming out with another one shortly. One who I haven't met yet.
Oh, okay.
But we had met in regards to, we met Sting that night. We met another one after that. Sometime after was, and special to me was Paul Simon. I bumped into him shortly after signing in the UK, and a great conversation with a great mellow guy. We were at this big bombastic party, and he was pretty a low-key guy hanging out with low-key people. So when you meet him, it's pretty bracing. But once you get beyond that and just start, talking normally, it's like, God, he's just, there's just two people just chatting about this and that. And so he was asking about the label and how we're doing. And
are these people just the same as us?
God,
What's the difference?
It didn't feel that way to me. No, when I met them, I was like, good Lord, he's shorter than me, number one, but this is bizarre. Yeah, pretty much. Paul was Paul, and Paul was all over the place with people. He's fantastic to meet, but he knew how to show himself. Linda was very more, down to earth and could talk to us about this and that. And we felt, more at home with that fashion. Some of them a little tough to approach, but Paul Simon, when I met him, I was really touched with the fact that he was a very, and you can see he's reserved in his music pretty much, but you think to yourself, well, what's he like as a person? And he was very much that way. He didn't, feel like partying all night, and he was there just with an elderly couple, and we talked about music and the studio and so forth. It was pretty surreal, and over the course of months that followed that, we just kept on meeting more and more people. And so we never thought of ourselves, oh, we must have made it or anything like that, because we were still... At that point, good Lord, who's next? I do not know.
Yeah.
We forgot to ask for autographs. Put it this way, I didn't even cross my mind at the time. People, I guess, who were leaving the studio selling autographs for Paul and Linda and everything. And I thought, God, it didn't even come to mind. But it wasn't that kind of thing. So it was just more. We were very, very lucky, very fortunate. Absolutely.
Well, I have one quick question I wanted to punch in here that you had mentioned in the email. By the way, guys, I connected with George through the Seeds of Music email newsletter. He's actually a viewer of the show, and we got in touch and got him on the show. So just letting you know that I'm open to that as always. And I think that every artist, just like George, has some kind of valuable experience that we can learn from. That was just an aside there.
Yeah, very good.
But I wanted to ask, you mentioned in the email that for you it's 1% of inspiration and then comes the studio work. Right. Why 1% of inspiration? Why doesn't inspiration take up like a huge percentage?
Well, gosh, when you're immersed in it, it does initially, and you could sit there with that same riff and maybe do it over and over and say, God, this is good. But then you have to stop and say, oh, wait, I got to keep it within 3 minutes and 30 seconds about. Mm-hmm. And, I can't do 4 choruses or something like this. So then you have to backtrack and say, okay, all right, where's the land going to lay literally once we get this done? You take as much of that. I mean, I'd work over a song probably a course of 2 days, maybe 3 days at best. If a melody would keep on circling me after a while, I would address it and say, okay, maybe this is, noteworthy, and we'll keep it and work around it. If it works itself into something, it just comes out as an egg sometimes. I think you know that maybe as an artist as well. If you write, sometimes it just come out as an egg and you're like, good, put it on the shelf and you're done. It's like, wow.
15 minutes and it's done. No.
Yeah, and you're like, God, I just did that in 5 minutes, you know. Some of the easier songs that I've written, even Extraordinary Dream was the one we got signed with. And I'll be putting that on a link as well, because I think some of the newer music that I have out there that song is not included, and it should be.
Okay.
That was written very, very quickly, very briefly, and very forwardly. There wasn't a lot of arranging to do in it. It just went kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. But nowadays, and I think that it takes more craft for me, that I want to make sure that the point that I'm getting is coming forth, but it's got to be well crafted as well. So I'm still sometimes struggling with that part of it, to do it as well as the studio might at home with a multi-track recorder and this kind of thing. And that's it can be taxing, because you're your own recording engineer. You have to really ask other people to listen. So what do you think of this, to get distance from it?
Yeah.
When you're in the studio, pretty much they'll look at you funny if things are not going that well. Say, now drop that part. But if you're working solo, how are you to know, really? You know, that kind of thing. So
jump on a forum, post your music, ask for feedback. Hopefully, you know.
I should mention, I guess while I'm here, the guys out of the UK, songcrafters.org. Okay. And these are a bunch of guys. They're regular people, but they're also a special bunch in that they really listen to what you have to do, and they respond to nearly every song that comes out. And if there's not a certain amount of responses to songs, the guy who runs the website, he'll normally say, listen, no one's really heard this, so would you have another listen to this? And you'll more than often not get a response from these guys, and it's usually, you know, a great response you're getting. And they'll tell you if, you know, if something's not going that well, they'll let you know as well, but not in a bad fashion. So they've been a touchstone for me over the past 2 years, I would say.
Are they geared towards specific genres, or could you send like...
No, gosh. Some of them are down and out rock and roll. Some of them are jazz. Some of them are piano, and a whole group of people. There's a good number of them as well. But they'll get back to you. A good group of people. So it's been 2 years I've been working with them as a sounding board, even before I should take off on my next little adventure and decide, okay, this is going to be a release. Kaboom, kaboom. So. You know, all hands on deck and kind of thing. Because right now I've crafted it to maybe 60 to 70% of what I really need to do. Okay. Take it to a bigger, better studio, and then pop it out. And then becomes of course, as you know, the business end of it after that, if it should get picked up.
So one quick final question. This is the fun question. What is your favorite album? I actually paused like I forgot it, but I ask it in every interview.
That's a tough one, yeah.
What's your favorite album, and what would your life be like if it didn't exist?
Wow, that's close. Really close between Band. Yeah, between I would say Band on the Run or Madman Across the Water, Elton John. And both address different parts of my life. But Madman Across the Water, it was a curious story. It actually was. I was in San Diego, California, and kind of at odds with myself in a lot of the ways, just at that point in my life, in and out of a relationship and that kind of a thing. And this tape, I think it was just, I had like a little cassette box, and I was going by this thrift store. Now, this is 1988 or 87, something like that, and they were just selling knockoff cassettes, and I didn't have anything that day. And so I thought, well, I've never listened. Who would listen to that? I have no idea. I popped it in, Madman Across the Water, and all of a sudden it kind of sunk in, and it stayed there. I mean, for years and years and years. That one was really pretty pivotal as far as, but Band on the Run, I mean, that one was a knock dead, you know. Every other song was like, oh, good Lord, how did he do this, you know? Every single time, and they're still doing it now to an extent. They'll still come out with songs that are just like, good Lord, there's just every other day they're writing them like this. I don't get it, you know. But it keeps me motivated, absolutely motivated. When I hear something on the radio that's like, wow, okay, that'll knock you off your seat, no doubt. I'll have it in my back of my mind at times. Is what I'm doing, is it coming from me? Is it really honestly what I'm doing? And is it crap or is it not crap? You know, I'll be asking myself, but I'll also bounce it off other people, songcrafters.org being one of them. And they'll be honest and upfront with me, because I know where things can go if they go well, put it that way. And if it should go that way again, I'll be more well-rounded this way, coming at it this way, as opposed to I was in the past, because we saw so much so quickly. And that was kind of worked against us in a way, because we were so, knocked all over the place so very quickly. Mm-hmm. But it was also amazing. It was I could go on and on about that part of it, I'm sure, but it was pretty cool to say the least. And it's still out there. I mean, these people are still out there, kind of doing stuff. So, it literally motivates me every day to get up and write better things, or
And in turn, you are motivating everyone else, in your own way, all the people within your circle. So it's just like a chain. It's a chain of motivation. I see that you're motivated, it motivates me, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because it literally can happen. I mean, those two words, you take them with a grain of salt. You literally do. But when you think to yourself, okay, now if they should literally drop this in your lap, and a lot of us are after that kind of a thing, or maybe we're not, but if it's drop in your lap, are you prepared to? And who really thinks about that?
I'm searching for the path where it doesn't, where you don't wait for it to drop in your lap,
right?
You just hash it out day to day, work at it, learn, experiment, keep an open mind, and then one day you'll hit that tipping point. You'll hit that tipping point, and it'll feel like things are dropping on your head.
Whereas they hadn't been, right? You've been doing the right thing all along, right?
It's just what I'm seeing. It just go read the tipping point if you haven't. It just made a lot of that this idea of when things actually start happening. Why did they start happening in such a big scale? It was an awesome book. It changed my viewpoint. But George, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, much appreciated, and thanks for having me on.
Okay, no problem. See you later.
That wraps up another episode of Seeds of Music, where we had George Hendrickson on the show with us. Make sure to check out his links below and check out his songs and support what he does. If you haven't signed up for the email newsletter yet, go ahead and do that. Head over to seedsofmusic.net and punch your email into any of the forms there. It's totally free, and it's the best way to stay up to date with everything going on at Seeds of Music. And if you like this interview, you felt like you gained something of value from it, make sure to like and share it with your friends. Use Facebook, use Twitter, use whatever. Just share it. And lastly, comment on the video. What was your greatest takeaway from the interview? What will you take away and apply and put into action right now? And lastly, who would you like to see interviewed next? Do you know someone who is a really talented artist who has a great story to tell? Just send me an email to kyle.seedsofmusic@gmail.com. And plus, that someone that needs to be interviewed, needs to have their story shared, might be you. So don't hesitate to send me an email. I answer every single one. At the most, it'll take me a day or two to get back, but rest assured I do get back. So see you next time.